Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. Rain drummed against the window of Jake's home office as he stared at the lines of code on his screen, trying to focus through the fog of exhaustion. The photo of his mother on his desk caught his eye, her warm smile frozen in time, taken just months before the cancer diagnosis. He quickly looked away, his fingers hovering motionless over the keyboard. The doorbell's chime cut through the steady patter of rain, startling him. Jake glanced at his computer clock, 9:47 p.m. He hadn't ordered anything, and nobody visited him these days. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. "Coming," he called out, pushing away from his desk. His joints cracked as he stood. How long had he been sitting there? Through the frosted glass of his front door, he could make out a silhouette. Female, elderly based on the posture, but something seemed off about the proportions. Jake opened the door and his world tilted sideways. The woman standing on his porch was tall, regal, and unmistakably not human. Her skin glowed a soft purple in the porch light, seeming to pulse gently with some inner luminescence. Silver-streaked curls framed a face that could have belonged to an ancient goddess, with eyes that held impossible depths of wisdom. She wore what appeared to be flowing robes made of something that shifted between liquid and solid. "Jacob Morrison," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made his chest vibrate. "I am Eldara. May I come in? The rain disagrees with my cellular structure." Jake found himself stepping aside automatically, his brain struggling to process what his eyes were seeing. The woman, Eldara, glided past him, leaving a faint trace of ozone in her wake. What?" Jake managed, closing the door. "How do you know my name?" Eldara settled herself onto his worn couch as if it were a throne. "I know many things about you, Jacob. Your work in digital creation, your solitude, the loss of your mother." Her expression softened. "My condolences, by the way. Losing one's maternal anchor is never easy, regardless of species." Jake's shock gave way to a flash of anger. "Who are you? What do you want?" "Direct. Good." Eldara nodded approvingly. "I am a matriarch of the Stellar Concordat, and I have spent the last 17 of your Earth years searching across 12 galaxies for you." "For me?" Jake dropped into his reading chair, legs suddenly weak. "Why?" Eldara reached into her robes and withdrew what appeared to be a bracelet. It was made of a material Jake couldn't identify, with swirling patterns that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. "Because you, Jacob Morrison, are the perfect match for my granddaughter." Jake barked out a laugh, but it died in his throat when he saw Eldara's serious expression. "This is insane. I don't—" "Here." Eldara held out the bracelet. "This is the binding charm. It will help you understand." Against his better judgment, Jake took it. The moment his fingers touched the surface, the bracelet began to glow with a soft blue light. Images flashed through his mind. A garden of impossible crystal flowers, a sunset that painted the sky in colors he had no names for, and a face, a young woman with the same purple skin as Eldara but with features that made his heart skip a beat. "What was that?" he gasped, nearly dropping the bracelet. "That was Liana," Eldara said softly. "My granddaughter, and those were glimpses of what could be." Before Jake could respond, another chime cut through the room. Not his doorbell this time, but a melodic tone that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Eldara smiled. "Ah, perfect timing. She's here." "She's what?" Jake stood up so quickly he knocked over his chair. "Here? Now?" The air in the center of his living room began to shimmer, coalescing into a tall, slender figure. When the light faded, Jake found himself staring at the woman from his vision. But the reality was even more striking. Her purple skin had a more delicate luminescence than her grandmother's, and her large, dark eyes seemed to hold entire galaxies. She wore something that looked like a modernist interpretation of a sundress, made of the same shifting material as Eldara's robes. "Grandmother," Liana said, her voice carrying a musical quality that made Jake's spine tingle. "I told you not to." She trailed off as her eyes met Jake's, and he saw a blush darken her cheeks to a deeper violet. The binding charm in his hand pulsed warmly, and Jake felt an echo of her embarrassment and uncertainty, and underneath it all, a loneliness that matched his own, beat for beat. "Liana," Eldara said, rising gracefully, "this is Jacob Morrison. Jacob, my granddaughter, Liana." Jake became acutely aware that he was wearing his oldest t-shirt and hadn't shaved in 2 days. Hi." He mentally kicked himself. Smooth. "Hello?" Liana replied softly, her eyes dropping to the binding charm in his hand. "Grandmother, you didn't—" "I did what was necessary," Eldara said firmly. "The time of convergence approaches, and you have rejected every suitable match from our own people." "Because I'm not a suitable match for our people," Liana shot back, an edge of frustration in her voice. She turned to Jake. "I apologize for my grandmother's intervention. She means well, but she can be rather determined," Jake suggested, finding his voice. A small smile tugged at Liana's lips. "I was going to say overwhelming." The charm pulsed again, and Jake caught a flash of something. Liana as a child standing apart from a group of purple-skinned children, their laughter turning to whispers as she passed. "You're different," he said without thinking. "Like me." Liana's eyes widened. "The charm? You can feel it already? Excellent." Eldara clapped her hands together, the sound like crystal bells. "The resonance is even stronger than I anticipated. Jacob, the binding charm is an ancient artifact of our people. It facilitates emotional and physical synchronization between compatible pairs. The fact that it's responding to you both so quickly is most promising." "Wait," Jake held up his hands. "Slow down. What exactly are you asking of me? Of us?" "Nothing that isn't already written in your stars," Eldara said cryptically. Liana made an exasperated sound. "Grandmother, please. He deserves a proper explanation." She moved closer to Jake, and he caught a scent like midnight blooming flowers. "Our people. We're facing a crisis. Our genetic diversity is failing. We need new bloodlines, new connections. But it's more than just biology. We need genuine bonds, real emotional connections." "And you think I'm— what? Some kind of genetic lottery ticket?" Jake tried to keep the bitterness out of his voice. "No," Liana said quickly. "No, it's not like that at all. The charm doesn't just measure physical compatibility. It responds to emotional resonance, to potential for real connection. It can't be fooled or forced. That's why—" She hesitated, a deeper violet blush coloring her cheeks again. "That's why I've spent nearly 2 decades searching," Eldara finished. "Not for just any human, but for the right one. For someone who could truly understand and complement my granddaughter." Jake looked down at the charm, which had begun to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. Another vision flashed through his mind. Liana laughing at something he'd said, her eyes sparkling with joy. The loneliness that had been his constant companion since his mother's death seemed to ease, just slightly. "This is a lot," he said finally. "I mean, an hour ago I was debugging code, and now I'm talking to aliens about— what exactly? Marriage? Dating? Interstellar genetic diversity programs?" "Now you're starting to ask the right questions," Eldara said, looking pleased. "But perhaps we should discuss the details over tea? I've become quite fond of your earth beverage during my search." Before Jake could respond, a loud crack of thunder made them all jump. The lights flickered ominously. "Oh dear," Eldara murmured. "It seems the atmospheric conditions are becoming unstable. Our presence tends to have that effect initially. We should establish proper dimensional anchoring before your power grid is affected." "Dimensional what now?" Jake asked weakly. Liana stepped forward, her expression determined despite her obvious discomfort. "I can handle the anchoring, grandmother. You've done enough, arranging for one night." The lights flickered again, and Jake felt the air growing thick with static electricity. The binding charm grew warm against his palm, and suddenly he could feel Liana's anxiety mixing with his own. He had a feeling this was just the beginning of a very, very strange night. Liana raised her hands, and Jake watched in amazement as patterns of light began to dance around her fingers. The static charge in the air intensified, making his hair stand on end. "I need to establish 3 anchor points," she explained, her voice strained with concentration. "It will stabilize the dimensional overlap between our realms." "How can I help?" Jake found himself asking, surprising himself with how natural it felt to offer. The charm pulsed warmly, and Liana's eyes met his. "You already are," she said softly. "The charm. It's helping ground our energies through you." "Indeed," Eldara observed with obvious satisfaction. "The synchronization is remarkable. Liana dear, focus on the northern vertex first." As Liana worked, weaving light into complex patterns that hurt Jake's eyes if he looked at them too directly, he felt waves of her concentration and effort through the charm. Without thinking, he stepped closer to her, holding out the artifact. The moment she touched it, the light pattern stabilized, snapping into place like puzzle pieces. "There," Liana breathed, swaying slightly. "That should hold for now." Jake reached out to steady her, and the moment their hands touched, another vision washed over him, this time stronger, more vivid. He saw himself and Liana walking through what looked like a garden made of living light, their hands intertwined, looking at each other with... He pulled back, his heart racing. Liana's eyes were wide, and he knew she'd seen it too. "Well," Eldara said, breaking the charged silence, "I believe that's enough excitement for one evening. Liana, you'll need rest after the anchoring. We should return to our temporary quarters." "Return?" Jake asked, hating how disappointed he sounded. "You're not staying here?" Eldara laughed, the sound like wind chimes. "My dear boy, we may be aliens, but we're not barbarians. We've established a suitable base of operations nearby. Though..." She glanced meaningfully at the charm, still clasped between Jake and Liana's hands. "I suspect we'll be seeing quite a lot of each other." Liana reluctantly pulled her hand away from the charm, though Jake noticed she let her fingers brush against his as she did. "I am sorry about all this," she said quietly. "Grandmother means well, but her methods are dramatic." "I'm right here, dear," Eldara said dryly. Jake found himself smiling despite the absurdity of the situation. "It's okay. I mean, it's not okay. This is completely insane, but..." He looked at Liana. "I'm not sorry you came." The smile she gave him in return made the charm pulse so strongly he nearly dropped it. "We'll return tomorrow," Eldara announced. "There's much to discuss, and young Jacob here will need time to process everything. Keep the charm," she added as Jake tried to hand it back. "It's attuned to you both now." Before Jake could protest, the air around the two women began to shimmer. The last thing he saw was Liana's face, her expression a mix of hope and uncertainty that he felt echoed in his own heart. After they vanished, Jake stood in his living room for a long moment, the charm warm in his hand, the scent of ozone and midnight flowers lingering in the air. His gaze fell on his mother's picture, and for a moment he could almost hear her laugh, could almost see her shaking her head at the strange turn his life had taken. "Well, Mom," he said softly, looking down at the artifact that was still pulsing gently in time with his heartbeat. I guess I'm not going to be lonely anymore. The rain outside had stopped, and through his window, Jake could see stars shining in the cleared sky. They seemed to twinkle more brightly than he remembered, as if they too were aware that his world had just become much, much bigger. Jake woke to the smell of something burning. The binding charm on his nightstand pulsed with alarm that wasn't his own. He bolted upright, his heart racing as he registered unfamiliar sounds coming from his kitchen. "Oh no, no, no!" Liana's musical voice carried through the house, followed by the clatter of pots. Jake sprinted downstairs, taking the steps 2 at a time. He skidded to a halt in the kitchen doorway, mouth dropping open at the scene before him. His normally pristine kitchen looked like a war zone. Every pot and pan he owned seemed to be in use, strange colored smoke rising from several of them. Liana stood in the middle of the chaos, her purple skin dusted with what appeared to be flour, wearing one of his old t-shirts over her ethereal dress. She clutched a spatula like a weapon, staring in horror at something that might once have been pancakes. "I wanted to surprise you," she said miserably, not turning around. "The charm showed me your memories of your mother's breakfast, and I thought—" Jake felt a wave of emotion wash over him, not just Liana's disappointment, but something deeper. He stepped into the kitchen, carefully avoiding a puddle of something iridescent on the floor. "You saw that memory?" he asked softly. Liana nodded, finally turning to face him. Sunday mornings, blueberry pancakes. She'd sing while she cooked. She gestured helplessly at the smoking pan. "I tried to replicate the emotional resonance, but Earth ingredients don't respond the same way as ours. They don't feel right." Jake picked up the spatula, examining the glowing purple substance stuck to it. Are these supposed to be pancakes?" "They're lumenberry cakes," Liana said, a hint of defensiveness in her voice. "A traditional breakfast dish from my world. I thought I could adapt them, but—" She waved her hand at the chaos. "Earth physics are so restrictive." Jake couldn't help it. He laughed. After a moment, Liana joined in, her crystalline giggle mixing with his deeper chuckle. Through the charm, he felt her embarrassment fade into something warmer. "Come on," he said, setting down the spatula. "Let me show you how Earth cooking works. No emotional resonance required." Over the next hour, Jake taught Liana the basics of making pancakes. She proved to be a quick study, though her tendency to try to enhance the process with alien technology led to some interesting results. When she accidentally made a batch of batter achieve temporary sentience, Jake had to draw the line. "Earth rules," he insisted, trying to keep a straight face as the batter tried to escape the bowl. "No quantum manipulation in my kitchen." Liana pouted, but her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Fine, but you're missing out on some significant flavor improvements." As they sat down to eat their mostly normal pancakes, Jake felt the charm warm against his wrist. Images flickered through his mind. Liana as a child, trying to cook traditional dishes but always adding her own unconventional twists, much to her instructor's dismay. "You've always been different," he said, understanding dawning, "even in how you approach your own traditions." Liana's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Yes," she admitted, "I never quite fit. My people value precision, control. I've always wanted to experiment, to find new ways of doing things." She smiled ruefully. "It's part of why grandmother's matchmaking efforts on our world failed so spectacularly." "Tell me about it?" Jake asked, genuinely curious. Liana set down her fork, her expression growing distant. "There were 12 potential matches, all technically compatible, all from respected families, and all completely boring." She shuddered dramatically, making Jake grin. "Can you imagine spending eternity with someone who's scandalized by the idea of adding extra spark to their morning meal?" So that's why your grandmother started looking off-world? Jake asked, pushing his empty plate aside. Liana's expression shifted, something flickering across her face too quickly for Jake to catch. Through the charm, he felt a brief pulse of guilt. Partially, she said carefully. There were other factors. Before she could elaborate, the air shimmered with the now familiar sign of dimensional transit. Eldara materialized in Jake's kitchen, taking in the chaos with raised eyebrows. I see you've been experimenting with Earth cuisine, she observed dryly. At least nothing appears to be permanently altered this time. One minor molecular restructuring, and nobody ever lets you forget it, Liana muttered. The palace kitchen still glows during full moons, Eldara reminded her. She turned to Jake. I trust my granddaughter hasn't completely destroyed your cooking space. It's fine, Jake said quickly, noticing Liana's embarrassment through the charm. We were just finishing breakfast. Did you need something? Indeed. Eldara's expression grew serious. The council has requested an update on your progression. They're particularly interested in the charm's synchronization levels. Jake felt Liana tense beside him. The council? I thought this was just... He gestured vaguely between himself and Liana. You know, us? Nothing is ever just anything when it comes to our people, Eldara said. Liana, perhaps it's time to explain more fully. Liana stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Grandmother, please, it's too soon. The convergence won't wait for convenient timing, Eldara said firmly. She turned to Jake. Our species is facing a crisis. The energy that sustains us, what you might call our life force, is becoming unstable. We need new patterns, new combinations to stabilize our genetic matrix. Jake felt his stomach drop. So this is just about breeding stock? No. Liana's vehemence surprised him. Through the charm, he felt her distress, her desperate need for him to understand. The binding charm doesn't just measure physical compatibility. It's about resonance, connection, something deeper. But it is part of it, Jake pressed, standing as well. This whole thing, finding me, the charm, all of it, it's not just about us potentially having a relationship. It's about saving your species. The silence that followed was deafening. Through the charm, Jake felt a whirlwind of emotions from Liana, fear, guilt, longing, and something else he couldn't quite identify. Yes, she finally admitted. But Jake, you have to understand, I need some air. He cut her off, pulling away when she reached for him. The charm pulsed with shared pain at the separation, but he ignored it. I need to think. He walked out of the kitchen, out of the house, not looking back at the two alien women. But he couldn't escape the echo of Liana's emotions through the charm, couldn't shut out the way her pain mingled with his own confusion and hurt. Hours later, Jake sat in a park, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded him of Liana's skin. The charm hadn't stopped its gentle pulsing, a constant reminder of the connection he wasn't sure he could trust anymore. A shadow fell across him, and he looked up to find Liana standing there, her ethereal dress shimmering in the fading light. I thought I'd find you here, she said softly. The charm, it led me to you. Jake shifted on the bench, making room for her but not meeting her eyes. Did you know? From the beginning? Liana sat beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. Yes, she whispered. But Jake, what I feel for you, what we feel, it's real. The charm can't create emotions that aren't there. It can only amplify what already exists. But how can I know that? Jake turned to face her finally. How can either of us know what's real and what's being amplified? Through the charm, he felt her frustration spike. Because I felt it before the charm. The moment I saw you in your living room, before I ever touched this. She grabbed his wrist where the charm sat, and instantly both of them gasped as memories flooded between them. Jake saw Liana watching him through the dimensional viewport as Eldara tracked him down, felt her curiosity about this solitary human who seemed to carry the same kind of loneliness she did. He felt her initial resistance to her grandmother's matchmaking plans dissolve the moment she actually met him. And Liana, through his memories, saw herself through his eyes that first night, how she'd seemed to bring color back into his grayscale world, how her awkwardness in the kitchen that morning had made him feel truly alive for the first time since losing his mother. They broke apart, both breathing heavily. The setting sun caught Liana's face, making her purple skin glow like amethyst. "I didn't know," she said softly. "I didn't know you saw me like that." "Neither did I," Jake admitted. "Not really, until just now." He ran his fingers over the charm thoughtfully. "But it still doesn't change the fact that there's this bigger purpose behind everything." "There's always a bigger purpose," Liana said, her voice gaining strength. "My people need this connection, yes, but they need it to be real. A forced bond, a false connection, it wouldn't work. The energy has to come from genuine emotion, genuine connection." She took his hand. "What I feel for you is real, Jake. Saving my people would be a wonderful consequence, but it's not why I'm here right now." The charm hummed between them, and Jake could feel the truth in her words. But he could also feel something else, a deeper worry she was trying to hide. "There's more, isn't there?" he asked. "Something else you're not telling me." Liana withdrew her hand slowly. "Yes," she admitted. "The convergence. It's not just about saving my people. It's about transformation. Whoever I bond with, the changes will affect both of us, permanently." "Changes?" Jake felt his mouth go dry. "What kind of changes?" Before Liana could answer, the sky above them suddenly rippled with aurora-like lights. The charm grew cold against Jake's skin. "No," Liana breathed, standing quickly. "It's too soon. The convergence. It's accelerating." The air crackled with energy, and Jake felt waves of panic rolling off Liana through the charm. In the distance, he could hear car alarms going off as the atmospheric disturbance spread. "What's happening?" he demanded, standing beside her. "Time's running out," she said, her voice shaking. "Jake, I have to go. I need to help stabilize the dimensional anchors before things get worse." She turned to him, her eyes glowing with an inner light he hadn't seen before. "But you need to decide, soon, whether you can accept all of this, me, my people, the changes it will bring. Because once the convergence begins in earnest—" She didn't finish the sentence. Instead, she reached up and touched his face gently. Through the charm, Jake felt everything she couldn't say. Her fear, her hope, her growing feelings for him, and underneath it all, a desperate race against time he was only beginning to understand. Then she was gone, leaving him alone in the darkening park as the strange lights continued to dance across the sky. The charm pulsed steadily against his wrist, a reminder of a choice he would have to make, not just about love or connection, but about who and what he was willing to become. The aurora had spread across the entire city by midnight. Jake sat in his darkened living room, watching the alien lights dance across the sky through his window. The binding charm hadn't stopped its urgent pulsing since Liana's departure, sending waves of distant anxiety through their connection. His phone had been buzzing non-stop with notifications about the strange atmospheric phenomenon. Local news was calling it an unprecedented meteorological event. Jake knew better. The air shimmered, and Eldara materialized in his living room. She looked different, older somehow, with strain evident in her usually composed features. "The convergence is accelerating," she said without preamble. "We're running out of time." "What exactly is the convergence?" Jake stood, the charm growing warmer against his skin. And don't give me any more half-truths or diplomatic answers. I need to know everything. Eldara studied him for a long moment, then nodded. The convergence is a quantum resonance cascade. Think of it as a wave of energy that connects all our people across dimensions. Usually, it's a gradual process that happens over centuries. But something has changed. The wave is becoming unstable, threatening to break the connections that hold our civilization together. And somehow, I'm supposed to help stop this. Not stop it, guide it. Eldara moved to the window, watching the lights above. A union between you and Liana would create a new pattern, a bridge between our worlds that could stabilize the resonance. But the price, she turned back to him. The price would be transformation. You would have to leave your world behind, become something neither fully human nor fully of our kind. Jake felt his stomach clench. Would I still be me? Yes and no. You would retain your memories, your core self. But your physical form, your perception of reality, those would change dramatically. She paused. Liana would undergo similar changes. That's why finding the right match was so crucial. The transformation must be mutual, voluntary, and born of genuine connection. The charm suddenly flared with intense emotion, fear, determination, and something else. Jake gasped as a vision hit him. Liana, standing before what appeared to be a council of her people, declaring her intention to return home and face the convergence alone rather than force Jake into an impossible choice. She's going to try to handle this herself, he realized aloud. She's going to sacrifice herself to save both our worlds. Eldara's expression darkened. Foolish girl. A solo convergence would tear her apart. She gripped Jake's shoulders, her touch sending sparks of energy through him. Listen to me carefully, Jacob Morrison. I spent 17 years searching not just for someone compatible with our species, but for someone who could truly see my granddaughter, someone who could love her not despite her differences, but because of them. The visions I've been seeing through the charm, Jake said slowly, they're not just possibilities, are they? They're showing me what could actually happen if... A particularly bright flash of aurora lit up the room, and Jake felt the charm grow almost painfully hot. Through it, he caught a glimpse of Liana preparing for some kind of ritual, her face set with grim determination. We need to stop her, he said, the words coming out before he could think them through. Where would she go to attempt this? The dimensional anchor points she established, Eldara said quickly. They form a triangle around the city. She'll use them to channel the convergence energy. She studied his face intently. But Jake, if you go to her now, you must be certain. The convergence is too unstable. There won't be time for second thoughts. Jake touched the charm, feeling the pulse of Liana's emotions growing stronger. How do I find her? The charm will guide you, but we must hurry. Once she begins the ritual. Eldara's voice trailed off as another wave of aurora rippled across the sky, this time accompanied by a deep thrumming that made the windows vibrate. Then let's go. Jake grabbed his jacket. Can you do that teleporting thing with me? Dimensional transit with a human, highly irregular. Eldara's lips curved into a slight smile. But then, nothing about this situation has been regular. Take my hand. The world dissolved into light and sensation. When it reformed, Jake found himself in the city park where he'd last seen Liana. But it was transformed. The trees seemed to glow from within, their leaves shimmering with otherworldly energy. The air itself felt thick with possibility. And there was Liana, standing in the center of a triangle of light that pulsed in sync with the aurora above. Her purple skin glowed with internal radiance, her hair floating in an invisible wind. She looked both terrifying and beautiful, power incarnate and utterly vulnerable at the same time. Liana! Jake called out, starting forward. She turned, her eyes wide with surprise and something like fear. Jake? No, you shouldn't be here. The energies aren't stable. They could tear you apart. Like they'll tear you apart if you try this alone. He took another step closer to the triangle of light. Through the charm, he could feel her determination wavering. I know what the convergence means now. I know what it will cost. Then you know why I have to do this alone, Liana said, her voice breaking slightly. I can't ask you to give up everything you are, everything you could be. You're not asking, Jake said firmly. The charm pulsed between them and he felt her resolve weakening. I'm choosing, like you chose to come find me, like you chose to be different from your people. He reached the edge of the light triangle. I'm choosing you, Liana. All of you, your world, your differences, your destiny. The aurora above them intensified, colors swirling in impossible patterns. The charm began to glow with an inner light that matched the triangle's boundaries. Jake, Liana whispered, tears leaving luminescent tracks down her purple cheeks. The transformation. We don't know exactly what will happen. You could lose everything. Or I could gain everything. He held out his hand to her. I lost my mother. I lost my connection to this world. But then you showed up on my doorstep and brought color back into my life. Literally. He managed a small smile. I'm tired of playing it safe. I'm tired of being alone. Through the charm, he felt her loneliness echo his own, felt the years of being different, of never quite fitting in anywhere. But he also felt something else, hope, bright and burning like a newborn star. Eldara's voice rang out from behind them. The convergence is reaching critical threshold. If you're going to do this, it must be now. Liana looked at Jake's outstretched hand, then back at his face. Are you sure? Really sure? In answer, Jake stepped into the triangle of light. Energy coursed through him, setting every nerve ending alive. He reached for Liana, and when their hands touched, the charm exploded with light. The world dissolved into pure energy. Jake felt himself coming apart at the molecular level, felt Liana's essence intertwining with his own. Through the charm, through their connection, he saw everything. Her childhood memories, her dreams, her fears, all mixing with his own experiences until he couldn't tell where he ended and she began. Images flashed through his mind, crystal cities floating in violet skies, gardens of light and sound, dimensions folding in on themselves like origami made of starlight. He saw himself and Liana as they would be, neither fully human nor fully alien, but something new, something that bridged both worlds. The transformation was excruciating and ecstatic, breaking him down and rebuilding him molecule by molecule. Through it all, he held on to Liana's hand, their fingers interlocked as tightly as their souls were becoming. Above them, the aurora reached a crescendo of color and light, the convergence wave stabilizing around their union. The very fabric of reality seemed to hold its breath. And then, suddenly, everything settled. Jake opened eyes that saw the world in ways his human brain couldn't have comprehended before. Colors had depth, emotions had texture, and he could see the quantum threads that bound reality together. His skin shimmered with a subtle iridescence that shifted between human tones and Liana's purple hue. Liana stood before him, transformed as well. Her purple skin now held hints of his human coloring, and her eyes reflected the same new awareness he felt. Through the charm, now permanently fused into their transformed flesh, he felt her wonder matching his own. It worked, Eldara's voice came from somewhere both near and impossibly far away. The convergence has stabilized. The bridge between worlds is established. Jake looked at his hands, watching the play of light beneath his skin. This is incredible. He could feel everything, the pulse of the earth beneath his feet, the dance of atoms in the air, the quantum resonance of Liana's people across dimensions. "How do you feel?" Liana asked softly, touching his face with fingers that sparked with shared energy. "Like I'm finally awake," he replied. Through their enhanced connection, he showed her exactly what he meant, how his previous life felt like a dream compared to this new reality. The sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold that seemed to mirror their transformed states. The aurora faded, but the world remained changed, or perhaps they were the ones who had changed enough to see it as it truly was. Eldara stepped forward, her form shifting between dimensions as she moved. "The Council will want to meet with you both. There's much to discuss about your role as the first human-stellar hybrid pair." She smiled warmly. "But that can wait. For now, simply be." Jake and Liana turned to watch the sunrise together, their transformed bodies automatically aligning to share energy and emotion. Through their enhanced senses, they could see the invisible threads that connected everything, stars to planets, people to people, heart to heart. "No regrets?" Liana asked, though she could feel his answer through their bond. "Only that we didn't do this sooner," Jake replied, watching the play of quantum light across her skin. "Though I have to ask, did you really need to nearly burn down my kitchen to get to this point?" Liana's laugh rang out like crystal chimes, and Jake felt it resonate through every transformed cell of his being. Through the charm, through their bond, through the very fabric of their new shared existence, he felt her joy mixing with his own. Behind them, Eldara quietly shifted between dimensions and disappeared, leaving the newly transformed couple to begin their journey together, two beings who had chosen to become something entirely new for the chance to never be alone again. Whispers from the stars. In every moment of loneliness, remember that somewhere across the vast cosmos, there might be a soul looking for yours. Don't be afraid of transformation. Sometimes the most beautiful things in life require us to become something new. Like Jake and Liana, your perfect match may come in the most unexpected form, bringing colors to your world you never knew existed. Keep your heart open to the impossible, for love knows no boundaries, not even those between worlds. After all, aren't we all made of stardust just waiting to shine?